1. We're a crazy Disneyland family. Even as adults with families and responsibilities of our own, we still take big family Disney vacations just about every year. My mom, now 71, has a bad knee and doesn't ride the bigger, more intense rides anymore. So a few years back, we were having our magical day, and it was getting later, colder in the day. It had been raining on and off all day, so we were either in jackets or ponchos or both. We're from Arizona and hate the cold. Mom is sporting some high fashion, a grey Mickey jacket and a blue plastic poncho. As an important side note, my mother has short white hair. So we decided to hit Big Thunder Mountain, a western train roller coaster type ride, since the rain let up, and it has just come back up after being closed down earlier in the day. Mom was tired, so we set her up at a dry table in the Mexican restaurant under a heater with a snack and ran off like small children. So after a while, Mom curls up and dozes off while we're gone. And you know that place between a nap and being awake? Well, right as she gets there, someone shakes her awake from her shoulders. Mom, disoriented and half asleep, looks around to find a woman with a child, grumpy from being woken up and manhandled. "What do you want?" "Well, we saw you sleeping here, and my granddaughter wanted your picture and autograph." "What, my what?" The woman was a little shocked and maybe a little annoyed. She wanted a picture with the fairy godmother. My mother stared at her with a blank look that I can still picture in my mind. The thought process is here. Why would the Disney parks employed fairy godmother be sleeping in a poncho at the Mexican restaurant in rainy weather? "Lady, I don't work here and I'm not the fairy godmother." The woman must have been slightly embarrassed, huffed, and hurried her kid away. We got back shortly after and found a cold, grumpy mom who couldn't get back to her nap afterwards. We still laugh and joke about it, to the point that this Christmas I made her a nice warm fleece jacket that looks like the fairy godmother's cape from the original Disney Cinderella. We all laughed, and she loved it. She might have been nicer to play along, but 1, Disney is very strict on posing as a character. 2, she was asleep, and 3, my mom is not that lady. 2. Context: I work at a stadium, and we couldn't keep our uniforms in our lockers, so we have to come in to work with it on. I live in an area that requires me to take a ferry to commute to work. Many of my co-workers and one of my bosses does this. We are constantly asked questions regarding the ferry system, when we are wearing uniforms indicating the stadium we work for. This particular incident happened earlier this year during the regular season. My boss and I were just leaving the ferry terminal after traveling a good 40-minute ferry trip because we tend to carpool, but his car is a good distance away, so we have to walk. I have asthma and shorter legs than him. As I'm taking my time to breathe, this couple, man and woman with a thick Eastern European accent, is asking me questions about the ferry, including where they could buy tickets to get on the boat. They were in the car while I wasn't. I did my best to cut the conversation short and get out of there and catch up to my boss, but every attempt to do so was met with them asking more questions, which consists of, "Where do we buy tickets? How do we get on the boat? Where is the line?" I was a walk-on passenger, so where I buy tickets was different from a car ticket. I explained to them that they had to go to the back in that line where the stoplight was, and they just bypassed everyone to come over here, and those tickets are at that window and not in the terminal. Plus, there was the fact that I don't work for the ferry system and I work somewhere else, which is plainly on my uniform. Then they repeated. I gave up. Luckily, my boss, who is well over 6 foot, in his late 50s, came back over and was like, "P, what's going on?" I explained briefly to them, and then he turns to the couple and literally repeats what I said back to them, saying that we don't work for the ferry company, and you need to get back in that line over there at the intersection, etc. They lamented that they now have to go to the back of the line because of that. We even asked them if they were going by walk-on or a car, because those lines are different. Well, thank goodness my boss came to help me, and we even joke about how I look like an information booth, and that I tend to get into situations where I don't work for a company like this. This is almost a weekly situation of being asked regarding ferries. But this one I remember most because of how creepy it was in general. Almost all of my coworkers who take the ferries get asked at least once. I'm 29, female, on the autism spectrum. People tend to listen to my male coworkers more than me, though I have a loud voice. It's nice having backup when needed. I get asked questions on a constant basis, not just at this place, but many other areas I don't work at and I'm not in charge of. If I help my mom with her business, and we sell at events so people think we're an info booth. I had people trying to get touchy-feely with me before and just experienced that last year, so I was trying to prevent a repeat. The questions they asked were already answered, and it was better for my boss to help answer. I'm not confident with words at times. Thank you. 3. I recently overheard an older lady at a nail salon say that she despises the teachers' union because they ruined the opportunity for kids to be educated properly when schools had to go online for a year. This same lady also pulled her mask down every time she wanted to say something. She then went on to say, "You'll never see me thanking a teacher ever again." What made me angrier was when she went on to complain about a hockey game getting cancelled one of the nights because of the pandemic, and that if the stadium required masks for people to watch the game, that she would be pissed and would not go to the following game. Now, I'm a nurse working in Boston. I've heard way too many people saying selfish things before. But this conversation, which I was painfully forced to listen to because this lady was speaking so loudly in a small public space, really pissed me off. First, she is asking someone else, namely teachers, who also have families and their own safety to worry about, to wear the big boy pants and sacrifice so that her poor grandson doesn't get messed up, according to her words. Yet she refuses to even keep a stupid mask over her face. How does one expect someone else to sacrifice when they themselves cannot do a simple act, such as keeping a mask on their face? Also, at least schools were able to transition education over to an online platform. That in itself is a blessing. And maybe instead of complaining, this lady probably could have used her time better than to complain, or rather go sit next to her grandson and help him concentrate on his online learning. Second, who cares about going to a sports game right now? At least you can still watch it on TV, no? That is probably one of the most privileged things to say. No sport should matter more than other people's safety or health. I'm sorry you can't get your entertainment, wow. But there are people literally dying because of this virus. I've seen patients die in front of my face because of COVID. One day the patient is fine. The next day their breathing becomes so compromised to the point they need to become intubated and put on ventilators. In many cases, they don't ever make it out of the hospital. This pandemic is still new to us. And yes, it really does suck to have to constantly plan our lives around it. But wearing a mask over your face is not the end of the world. It's not going to kill you, and it literally exists to keep you even the least bit protected. For anyone who thinks wearing a thin mask over your face is an inconvenience, I really hope you do reconsider that thought. There are people like me, other nurses, doctors, etc., who have to gun up head to toe and wear N95s that leave imprints in our faces. And we do this all day long. We're not complaining. We're tired and just as sick of this pandemic as anyone else, but we still do our jobs and chug along because we have to. So to that lady I overheard complaining, the story could have gone so many different ways. Your grandson could have gotten sick with COVID while at school during the initial deadly wave of the virus. He could have died because children are getting sick and dying from this too. How would you have liked that? Or you or your other family members could have died. It really isn't until someone you love is lost that some people realize the depth and seriousness of what's been going on. 4. A few years ago, I was working IT support and data analysis at a smallish, about 50 people company. I had gotten the job thanks to my father being the head of IT, and had spent the last few years trying to prove myself, and I generally liked my job, was good at it, and most people respected me. Even though I was young and looked younger, I had worked there longer than half of the company because we recently expanded to double the number of employees. I was in charge of assigning laptops, among other things, and I was the first line of support if something techie went wrong. One of the newer employees was a multilingual sales guy, Marty. Marty had a high opinion of himself and his own capabilities, including with technology. Instead of asking for help or resources from the IT team, he would rather look up problems himself and try to solve them, sometimes using free software downloads from random websites. You may think this is good, less work for me to worry about, but I liked helping people with their tech issues, and he had a knack for making things worse. He somehow managed to get a virus on his company MacBook, some tool that also happened to divert all his network activity to a random IP, a huge security issue. One day, Marty had a laptop problem that he couldn't solve. He didn't like it, but I told him he could either take it to an Apple store himself, it was under warranty, or I could reset it but keep his files. He took a day to think about it and decided to let me reset his MacBook. I informed him that I would have to perform a full backup, and this could take several hours depending on how many files he had. So I started the backup process in the morning and tried to go about the rest of my job. But Marty decided to park himself on a chair between me and my desk neighbor and watch the backup. It made me uncomfortable to have Marty in my personal space and sharing my desk with me. I told him he could still do a lot of his work via his phone, as other salespeople do when I work on their laptops, and in response he asked if he could use my phone charger. I tried politely hinting at him to go find somewhere else to sit, but he didn't get it. So I straight up told him he was in my personal space and making me uncomfortable, and to go find somewhere else to be, and I'll inform him when the mitigation is done in a few hours. The backup took longer than expected due to the number of files Marty had. Marty had decided, rather than sitting at his own desk, he still wanted to hover nearby and was on his phone in the IT lounge area, and making the people who work in that area slightly uncomfortable. The backup completed after lunch, but I had a meeting to attend with a VP before it finished. I rarely had meetings, and this one wasn't long, about half an hour. When I got back to my desk, after the meeting to check the status of Marty's laptop, I saw that it was behaving unexpectedly, netbooting. I asked my desk neighbor Victor if he had done this, and he told me no, but Marty had been at my desk while I was away at a meeting. My mind quickly filled in the blanks of what must have happened while I was away from my desk for just half an hour. Impatient Marty had come and wiped his hard drive, as according to what he had read online, I had done the full backup because it was policy and just in case. But I knew his problem would probably be solved if I reinstalled the OS but kept his files. And it would take less time too. But he had wiped everything and also managed somehow to wipe the recovery partition too. This man is dangerous, and I knew, thanks to a mistake I had made months before on a different laptop, that this job had gone from almost done to taking up 12 more hours to complete. I was pissed that he somehow thought that he could just walk all over my work. I was pissed that I would now have to work on this overnight because I don't want to keep him away from his laptop for more than a day. I angrily informed Marty what he had done and informed him that he had really messed up the laptop, and I definitely wasn't going to get it up and running today. But I was still angry, so I told my dad, the head of IT, what had happened, and he agreed that Marty had crossed the line. But I was still angry, so I told Marty's boss, the head of sales, what he had done. Marty had also talked to her, and she convinced me to lend him a spare laptop to use until I could finish fixing his. I confirmed with my dad that I would give him the oldest, clunkiest spare laptop on hand, and he agreed. That made me feel a little better, like at least Marty would be a little inconvenienced by what he'd done. Marty had majorly inconvenienced me. I took the amnesiac MacBook home and fixed it overnight, downloaded macOS and installed via USB. I restored Marty's files. I gave him back the laptop the next day. I was still pretty pissed at Marty, but he insisted he needed to talk with me privately. He took me into a room to basically say sorry and asked me not to tell on him next time. I said whatever, and left the meeting room because I just wanted him out of my face. When he gave me back the old loaner laptop, he told me he liked it better than his shiny new one and asked if he could keep using it. This slightly angered me further because it was supposed to be a punishment. He wasn't supposed to like it. I had to tell him no because, company policy, I'm not giving him an out-of-warranty laptop. I'm normally an easygoing, unforgiving person, but Marty thinking that he was entitled to do my job for me, unacceptable. Now, if you're thinking, Marty did not deserve any of my time at home. and now in today's post-pandemic environment, I certainly wouldn't suggest anybody do the same. But back then, taking occasional work home in exchange for being able to leave early, arrive late, take half days whenever you want seemed like a pretty good deal. I was definitely making compensation and perks to make it worthwhile. Back then, just a few years ago, the turn off your phone and email outside of work hours was a bit more of a radical idea than it is now. I think there has been a positive change in general worker culture in a short time. I hope it can continue, despite pushback from managers who want the control that they used to have. 5. I work at an auto parts store. In this industry, I have the privilege and joy of working with some very bright and hard-working individuals who move the company forward. However, this story is not about them. This is all about Hokey and Pokey. Pokey was very knowledgeable regarding auto parts, but he was also very slow-moving, slow-speaking, slow to answer phones, slow to react to emergencies, and slow to do any productive work whatsoever. Nice guy, but frustrating to have as a co-worker. Hokey, on the other hand, was not knowledgeable, but he moved quickly. This meant he messed things up at top speed. Messing things up was his prime talent on both a professional and personal level. He was also highly self-trained in avoiding work. I did my best to get along with him. I failed. Cleaning the store was supposed to be a task distributed evenly among the staff, but we all know if that was going on, there would be no story. Because I was the only one there who couldn't stand to be idle in between tasks, the bulk of cleaning usually landed on me. I generally didn't mind this too much, as long as someone would occasionally take out the trash or push a broom around. I was happy to have the freedom to add my special cleansing touches to the store. Except that I did not clean in the men's room. Being female, I left that cleaning task to the men, and because of that, that room was fairly disgusting. Think the toilet bowl was brown on the inside and the outside level of disgusting. It was so bad that some of the guys were too grossed out to use the men's room and used the ladies' room instead because I kept it clean. One bright summer day, our boss abandoned us. For real, she up and left the store without a word to any of us, never to return. The store was running badly before she left, but this threw us in a terrible state of chaos. We were without a boss for a while, and made to do with a temporary manager until the company could find someone to fill the position permanently. The temporary manager did a good job of keeping the store running, yet she was even more useless than the old boss with motivating Hokey and Pokey, or anyone else to do anything more than their immediate assigned tasks. As a result, all the cleaning, when there was any time to do so, was done entirely by me. The store slowly succumbed to filthy disarray, because despite my best efforts, I simply could not do it all. One day, the store got a rumor that our old boss was coming back, and we were excited. Although she was not a stellar boss, having her back would have been better than the situation we were in. Hokey and Pokey discussed cleaning up the store for our boss's return. They deliberately discussed this within my earshot in case I might jump up and take over the cleaning for them, since doing so would have simply been redundant in my own routine. I pretended not to hear this conversation, and chose not to interfere with their efforts. While Pokey had no ideas of his own on what and possibly how to clean, Hokey suddenly piped up and declared, "I'm gonna mop the floors. I'll have them so clean you can eat hamburgers off them." I made a mental note to never eat at Hokey's place. Our store is divided into 3 sections. The first section includes the shopping area, the restrooms, and the manager's office. The second section consists of aisles of inventory. The third section has some inventory, a lunch area, and a garage door where freight is hauled in and out. Hokey boasted that he was going to clean the entire store. Remember what I said about his prime talent? Out of pure morbid curiosity, I performed my appointed tasks nearby, so that I could have the best view of the train wreck that was certain to unfold. Without even using a broom to prep the floors, Hokey went straight to work filling the mop bucket with cold water, with no cleaning solution. And then he started, in the third section, right next to the garage door, where the floor is the filthiest. When you walked over this floor, you could hear and feel the crunch of stepping on a carpet of dirt, leaves, little rocks, bits of wood, scraps of garbage, and cottonwood fluff, all held together with decades of various spilled chemicals, mostly motor oil. He plopped this sopping, wet mop in the middle of this carpet. When he had produced a small circle of sludge, he dunked the mop back into the water, pulled it back out, and worked more in that circle, making it bigger. He did this for about 4 or 5 minutes. Now there was a large circle of sludge in the mop bucket, with the look and consistency of tar diarrhea next to him. The back section of the store was considered done. He moved on to the second section. Instead of changing the tar diarrhea out for clean water, he proceeded to get the mop good and wet in the gunk, and then proceeded to walk up and down the aisles of inventory, pushing the mop ahead of him, without so much as moving the mop from side to side. He simply walked up and down one aisle, down the other, up the next, etc., until he reached the end of the aisles. Even though the floor is made of concrete and had accumulated several spills and stains from over the years, the gooey track from the mop was very visible, and not exactly where one would go to eat hamburgers. Hokey was done with the second section. He moved on with the mop bucket of black ooze. Then he went to the first section, the main section, the section where innocent customers should not expect sludge monsters to lurk. For some unexplained reason of grace, Hokey left the main shopping area alone. Instead, he went into the men's room and mopped the floor in there. Remember what I said about the men's room? Only Hokey could manage to do anything to that floor to make it grosser than before. He slopped the vile sludge around the sink and toilet, tracking through the area in which he had mopped, then placing the men's room floor goop-laden mop back into the bucket of vile filth. He left grey footprints from the men's room to the next portion of floor he chose to violate. The next unfortunate section of floor was the manager's office. After he was done cleaning in there, the floor looked up at me with crusty eyes, reached out with a slimy hand with a raspy voice, asked for a hamburger. At this, Hokey declared himself finished with the mopping. This means he dumped out the sludge in the proper facility, rinsed off the bucket and mop, and put them away. Just kidding. He stowed the slushy mess under the sink in the men's room, clocked out, and left for home before anyone could tell him to do the task correctly. To his credit, though, Hokey made more of an effort to clean than Pokey did. Pokey spent this time looking busy while scrolling through social media on his phone. This concluded their combined efforts to clean the store. Today, I am the only remaining teammate of the store from that time period. Since then, we got a fabulous manager, hard-working team members who helped me clean. I got a raise, and in the absence of Hokey and Pokey, we have turned the store around. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild, episode 47. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do like, subscribe, comment, and share it around to all your friends and family. If you have a story you'd like to send in, you can send it to kingofthecities@gmail.com. That's kingofthecities@gmail.com. And you can find that in the description, along with all other Hellfreezer-related links, like the merchandise store and so on. Alright, I'm going to keep the rest of the outro a bit short today. I'm going to go finish work, then rest for a while, I think. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.